In American jails and prisons, they're called restraint chairs, devices marketed as tools for safety and control. But in the wrong hands, these chairs become instruments of torture and death, transforming minor arrests into death sentences and medical emergencies into fatalities. What follows are documented cases where people died during or after being strapped into these devices. Their stories, captured on surveillance footage and detailed in court records, reveal a pattern more disturbing than any fiction. Mentally ill inmates left to die while staff joke nearby, medical emergencies dismissed until it's too late, and perhaps most chillingly, the systematic torture of restrained individuals who had no way to defend themselves. These aren't isolated incidents. They represent a fraction of similar deaths across the country, deaths that continue today despite million-dollar settlements and promises of reform. What you're about to witness is evidence of a systemic failure that turns routine detention into a death sentence. Viewer discretion is strongly advised.
So still at this time, when you're putting this behind his head, you just think that this is an inmate who is pissed off and just banging his head and getting tased because he's mad.
Yes.
And that he's not having any psychological distress, correct?
Correct.
On October 4th, 2018, 40-year-old Jerod Draper died after being repeatedly tased while strapped to a restraint chair at Harrison County Jail in Indiana. His death, which led to a $1 million settlement, revealed how restraint chairs can become instruments of torture when combined with other forms of force.
Yes, Jerod. Are you having fun at your party?
No, Mom.
Where'd all these pretty girls come from?
I guess school.
I can't believe they'd hang around a guy like you.
Draper's ordeal began around 4 a.m. when he was arrested following a vehicle pursuit in Corridon, Indiana. Officers noticed cuts on his wrists, and Draper informed them he was feeling suicidal.
I tried to conduct a traffic stop. The driver, who happened to be Mr. Draper, he failed to stop the vehicle, and he ran over the curb.
He's coming right to you. Unfortunately, we'll be in pursuit.
3114 showing in pursuit.
He made a left into a parking area in which he finally came to rest. His wrists were cut. He had made statements about hurting himself. We also found a weapon that had blood on it. He was acting very agitated and aggressive from that point, which he resisted arrest, in which subsequently we had to detain him and arrest him.
Though initially taken to Harrison County Hospital for evaluation, he was quickly released and transported to the jail. During booking, Draper began showing signs of agitation and was placed in a cell under suicide watch. His condition deteriorated rapidly. He was observed walking into furniture, spinning in circles, and feeling warm to the touch with an elevated temperature. Instead of providing medical intervention, staff responded by strapping him into a restraint chair. What followed was captured in excruciating detail by the jail's surveillance cameras. Over a 15-minute period, Sergeant Matt Hulsey and jail nurse Michael Gregory subjected the fully restrained Draper to 7 separate taser deployments.
After an hour and 59 minutes, which is the maximum amount of time that an inmate or a pretrial detainee can be placed in an ECR restraint chair, he is removed from the chair, and he tells the jail commander that the night before he had been drugging. The jail commander does not inform medical staff or anyone else at the jail that Jerod has just admitted to him to ingesting drugs.
The footage shows officers placing the taser directly over Draper's heart in an attempt at stapling, creating an electrical circuit through his body. While Draper screamed in agony, the nurse was also observed stepping on his bare, shackled feet.
That's common to sit there and tell the person that they've got a taser on them so that they know not to fight or resist in any way.
But he wasn't fighting.
I didn't say he was. I said it's to let him know it's there.
So you threaten him with the taser?
No.
What are you saying to this man?
Stop resisting.
But he's not resisting.
Don't.
Right? I mean, was he resisting when you put the taser in his back?
I didn't have my hands on him, sir. I couldn't tell if he's tightening muscles or not, but it's being treated as if he's resisting.
And you're not the nurse there, right?
I'm playing an officer there, sir.
Because that's not medical care, correct?
That is not.
Did you think that standing up on top of his foot was going to make him stop banging his head?
I thought it might.
Where was the training that you got that told you standing on a man's unshod foot with your shod foot would make them stop banging their head? Where'd you get trained with that?
I don't recall any training like that.
Do you think you were ever trained like that?
No.
You just did it.
Trying to keep him from hurting himself.
Jail staff attempted to justify this treatment as pain compliance, claiming it was necessary to stop Draper from harming himself despite his hands, chest, and feet being completely immobilized.
When you administered the taser the first time to Mr. Draper's body, what and why did you do that?
To gain his compliance.
And were you afraid he was trying to escape?
He was resisting us doing what we needed to do to get him.
Were you afraid he was trying to escape?
No, not escape.
Were you fearful for your own physical safety?
Not my own physical safety, no.
Whose physical safety were you afraid for?
We do have several female officers, and I know I can take a punch better than they can.
Were his hands free to punch?
Not that I remember.
When asked if Draper had been able to strike or kick anyone while restrained, former Sergeant Halsey admitted, "No, sir, he was flailing around." The medical response was equally disturbing. While administering electric shocks to a restrained man, Nurse Gregory admitted he never checked Draper's pulse, blood pressure, or respiratory rate.
As you watch, it just continues to evolve into a session of torture.
The theory is introduce a little bit of pain on a certain part of the body to get an individual to stop a behavior or an action that's more than likely going to hurt them a lot more than the pain that you induced.
And 50,000 volts shot in your body is a little bit of pain, you think?
Yes.
You can see blood starting to accumulate in the spit mask.
So he's put the taser on him. So you believe that at this point, this is just, this pissed off guy's getting ready to do something that gets him tased again, right?
Yes.
Okay. There you are, and you see him with a taser in his chest. Do you think that's appropriate?
Looking back on it, no.
It wasn't until Draper became unresponsive that an ambulance was finally called. He was airlifted to Norton's Brownsboro Hospital in Louisville, where he was pronounced dead at 8:01 p.m. Though the medical examiner ruled Draper's death an acute methamphetamine overdose, the brutality he endured while restrained raised serious questions about the facility's practices. Yet remarkably, the Indiana State Police conducted no investigation into his death. Harrison County Prosecutor Otto Schalk declined to prosecute any officers involved, making this decision without any outside agency examination of the incident.
Mr. Draper died of excited delirium as a result of methamphetamine toxicity. The lack of treatment is what precipitated his death. What I saw was a corrections nurse basically torturing an inmate. There is absolutely no reason why a healthcare professional should be entering a cell with a taser.
Jerod Draper was treated like less than a human being that night.
The current Harrison County Sheriff has since implemented policy changes prohibiting the use of tasers on restrained inmates. However, this came only after the county paid a $1 million settlement to Draper's daughter. For Draper's mother, Vicki Budd, the changes came too late. For over 15 minutes, they tortured Jerod with a stun gun until he died, she said. It's like something in a movie that you can't bear to watch. The case gained renewed attention when it was featured in the documentary Safe Place as part of an investigation into over 300 deaths in southern Indiana jails between 2010 and 2020. Draper's death stands as one of the most thoroughly documented examples of how restraint chairs, particularly when combined with other forms of force, can enable the kind of systematic abuse that transforms custody into torture.
Jerod was an amazing kid. And he had a tough life and a lot of demons to fight. But he didn't deserve, by any means, what happened to him in that jail. And we got to find a better way to solve the drug problem than shoving people who are ill in jail. What he must have been thinking, what could he have been thinking those last moments?
The fear in his eyes. I've never seen anyone so scared. In the video, you can see the hematoma. You can see it in the video. The mental health specialist told him to quit being a crybaby.
In February 2023, 19-year-old Isaiah Trammell, a young man with autism spectrum disorder, died after being strapped in a restraint chair at Montgomery County Jail in Ohio. Trammell, who had autism, ADHD, and Tourette's syndrome, was arrested on a warrant and brought to the jail around midnight. Despite clearly being in crisis and informing officers of his conditions, he was met with ridicule rather than understanding. When he exhibited stimming behavior, a common self-regulatory response to stress in autistic individuals, officers mocked him, telling him he was behaving like an ass.
He was stimming in the videos, and he just kept hitting his head. Stimming, some people, it just helps them to calm down. It's not something they can control. Some people flap their arms, some people do hand. I mean, he did all of that too, but when he would get really upset, he would hit his head. The more they try to, control the stimming, like, the more irritated they get.
Security footage revealed the harrowing progression of events over his 10 hours in custody. Trammell pleaded for basic necessities, a blanket, a mat, a phone call to his family, and critically, his medication. All were denied because he was placed on suicide precautions.
Remember what Sergeant said? You're going to go there for 10 hours next time you go in there. You want to do that? Then have a seat and chill out. Sit down. Sit down.
As his distress escalated, he began banging his head against his unpadded cell door and wall. Rather than recognize these actions as manifestations of his autism and mental health crisis, jail staff responded by forcing him into a restraint chair, not once, but twice. When a healthcare worker from NAFCare, the jail's medical provider, attempted to speak with him, they quickly gave up, stating, "Okay, I'm done." This cursory interaction epitomized the facility's failure to provide appropriate medical care. The consequences were fatal. By the time Trammell was finally transported to the hospital, he had suffered severe head injuries.
Isaiah is at Miami Valley. He's on life support, and they're saying that there's nothing that they can do for him. There's too much brain injury.
Doctors would later tell his mother, Brandy Abner, that had they gotten your son sooner, we could have saved him. He died 3 days later, with officials ruling his death a suicide from self-inflicted brain trauma.
He hated people touching him. He hated to be touched. He hated to be restrained. Being confined. He hated to be confined. Absolutely, that would trigger him, and he would just panic. I do know they stripped him naked, and he hated his body to be exposed, and he kept telling them that. He kept asking them if they would just talk to him. Please just listen.
Can someone please listen to me? Please, let's talk about this.
He begged for mercy. He begged for someone to listen. He begged for a phone call, for medicine. He begged for a simple drink of water, Abner told county commissioners. My son was tortured in that jail, the jail that you provide. The case has sparked demands for reform in how jails handle neurodivergent inmates and those in mental health crisis. Trammell's death occurred amid broader concerns about Montgomery County Jail. He was one of 7 inmates who died at the facility in 2023, more deaths than 2021 and 2022 combined. The jail had contracted NAFCare, a company that a 2020 Reuters investigation found had the highest death tolls of any healthcare provider in U.S. jails. Before his death, Trammell had been living independently and working, demonstrating his capability to function in society despite his challenges. His father remembered him as deeply compassionate, saying one of his goals and dreams when he was younger was to build a homeless shelter and help those in need that couldn't help themselves. He was an outdoor enthusiast who loved hiking and dreamed of becoming a park ranger in Alaska. His mother has become a vocal advocate for change, describing his treatment as torture and calling for state investigation of the facility.
Is it unsafe? Yeah.
If they had paid attention, they would have known something bad was about to happen and he needed medical help right then and there.
While Montgomery County has since announced plans to increase behavioral health treatment space, Trammell's death stands as a stark reminder of how restraint chairs, when misused on vulnerable individuals, can transform moments of crisis into death sentences. His case adds to mounting evidence that these devices, particularly when used without proper medical supervision or as substitutes for mental health care, have no place in a system purporting to ensure inmate safety.